We need to cap the investment in 4G and start 5G, and that's actually not correct. And if you look at country in South Africa, they had actually the right strategy. They kept in strengthening the LTE layer. Now there is more than 4 bands in the for LTE.
This happens as there are conversations about whether there are parts of the continent that can leapfrog straight to 5G.
It's steps. It's not like you can just jump one to the other. I think it matures over time, but I've not seen anyone do a leapfrog that large from 3G to 5G.
5G is use case driven. We always talk about that. If we find relevant use cases, 5G use cases on a country level, then definitely there is a need to of course, there is a plan that we see on nationwide to launch 5G.
Wider 4G availability in South Africa helped many get through COVID lockdowns. Entertainment like movie streaming, TikTok videos, and music consumption became easier.
In the past, we relied on physical, music. There was a lot of piracy. All of that was considerably diminished through the advent of streaming, and we make music now instantly available, and available not just in one country, in one city, on one radio station, but across the world and instantly. So that is really the power of streaming.
Some say that realizing the appetite that comes with improved networks means that they can improve their offerings in Africa.
And Africa really is sort of the next frontier and the biggest growth opportunity we see as a company. It's obviously a vast continent, 1.4 billion population, the largest youth population in the world, and music has always been an integral part of culture in all corners of the continent. So we want to be part of that and enable that growth further for us and for music creators on the continent.
Africa is a very important area for us because the mission of Digital Virgo is really to enable people and allow them to access to services and digital content and to pay for that. And
at first, 5G is largely a product for industries and niche consumers like gamers who want extremely fast speeds.
Once you build the brand, once you fill the pipe, once you influence the ROI of the operators, then the consumer service will come in. In the meantime, you can access also enterprise segment. Fixed wireless access to enterprise, private lines, lightweight private networks.
Like I mentioned, the 5G fixed wireless access, that you would have your 5G CP at home and you have a connection like a fiber connection with the speed and the broadband. Or if we take specific user with the evolving specific user group like a gamer or people developing apps.
Those here at Africa Tech Festival and AfricaCom say those that bring their offerings to the continent must understand that each country and region would have its own unique makeup that requires tailor-made offerings.
Apart from 4G and 5G, broadband connectivity has also been a huge part of the conversation that's been taking place right here at the Africa Tech Festival.
Africa leads the rest of the world on broadband penetration. The highest is in North America, followed by Western Europe.
Broadband penetration in Africa is some way behind most of the rest of the world. So fixed broadband household penetration in Africa on average is 11.5%. So that compares to a global average of almost 60%. And then if you look at North America and Western Europe, it's above 90% in both those regions.
While African governments say they're trying to solve these issues, some realize an additional problem is the lack of digital literacy in many communities on the continent.
I can say that the biggest project right now, and especially that I'm personally championing in my office, is around digital literacy and skills, particularly for young people. We take it for granted when you grow up in an urban setting and you know the internet, you know what place to go to get information, you know how to leverage some of those opportunities online. That's not the same for everybody. And that's widening the gap of inequality.
And all of us need to be digitally literate to be able to access, participate, and benefit from the digital economy.
But while internet penetration grows in Africa, there are still governments that view what it can do with suspicion. Several countries have shut down the internet or parts of it in the past, and some continue to do so from time to time. These include the Democratic Republic of Congo, Nigeria, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Sudan, and Uganda.
The question would ask that, is there misuse of computer in Uganda? Where the answer is yes. Should that misuse be allowed? The answer is no. Is there room for regulation of how computers and our phones are used? The answer is yes. But I think there is a complete misinterpretation, deliberate or otherwise, by some of you, the media.
In sessions organized by the African Telecommunications Union and Huawei here at Africa Tech Week and AfricaCom, there are calls that regulations and laws that are created support and not stifle creativity that's allowed by broadband penetration. There are further calls that African governments try to have harmonized regulation.
Stifling innovation comes from, the lack of skills in our educational systems, so that young people are able to express themselves early enough in terms of their innovative skills. And so we need to have systems in our educational systems that encourage young people right from primary school to tertiary education to our universities.
As much of the world is still coming out of COVID-19 lockdowns, the pandemic revealed that the lack of broadband penetration in much of Africa blocked many from taking advantage of the digital economy. South Africa has the highest level of broadband penetration by far in Africa. As a result, in South Africa, e-commerce saw growth of over 60% in 2020, the first year of lockdown. There was a further 40% growth in the space in 2021, the second year of lockdown.
Broadband in Africa is growing strongly. In fact, over the last 5 years, the rate of growth in fixed broadband in Africa in terms of subscriptions and service revenues is the highest among world regions. Of course, that's in growth rates and not necessarily absolute growth, but I think this is a really positive sign, and it does indicate the potential, I think, for further growth.
There's certain towns where, for example, people in towns, more than 2 million people in a town have never been connected to fiber infrastructure. Now, in that fiber infrastructure project, if you put people on a fiber infrastructure backhaul for a 4G network as an example versus satellite, it fundamentally changes the experience of that town, and that, not even a village, 2 million people in a town is quite a metropolitan, right? We fundamentally change the lives when we...
The evidence of the positives that can be done by wider broadband penetration in Africa is clear. Speakers at the Ministerial Forum for Developing Africa's Digital Economy and at the Broadband 2022 events here in Cape Town say Africa's governments must create incentives for those who must lay fiber optic cables, as it has become evident that fiber is where Africa's home internet will largely come from going forward.
Let's shift away from the Africa Tech Festival right now and find out about some automation technology in the mining industry.
It's very new, so we call it Enterprise 5.0, because we say we take the company now from the fourth industrial revolution into this new level of doing business. And we've got a lot of test cases now, successful stuff. And we learn as we go on, and we can show the success stories there. And that's why these guys are here together, and a lot of mining guys here today, industrial guys, manufacturing, and they know each other, they talk, and they can see the benefits and the success on what we do. And you can see it in our results as well the last 3 years.
The artificial intelligence solutions that we've created some bots. So we actually created and built some knowledge in what we call Formia. It's a bot that we built on the Bitvest LS platform that is running in the whole of Bitvest group. So that platform, that MIAP bot actually in seconds gives you a full landscape of what's happening in your ICT landscape and where to unlock and create value. From there, we can then actually start helping what we call a self-funding digital roadmap for a customer. And then we can start putting more intelligent solutions, like also that I mentioned, advanced process control in a mining and manufacturing environment. What's the end goal? That you want to run an autonomous plant where you actually have no interference on the plant, but you run it with the most efficient output.
The elephant in the room is the going away of jobs. But also we need to realize that technology will bring advancement, and that will have a large impact on the safety of the miners. It's also important to understand that with digitization, one of the key things that was said in the presentations is that there needs to be a skills, upskilling and skills transfer, so that people don't get too bogged down by loss of jobs, but rather focus on the positive impact of digitization. In essence, digitization will better mining industry.
Is that jobs move up in the value chain, they change, and we would expect, just like the various industrial revolutions before changed the nature of work, right? The fact that cars came into being versus now horses being used to move people around. A lot of that is, we would expect people moving to those kinds of jobs where they're learning and applying technology. So I don't think it's a case of jobs going away, it's a case of, are people able to adapt?
The human element we will never be able to get rid of, and the human element is what we're doing now, is this engagement, talking, the love and the feeling of human. That never will be able to be replaced by AI or autonomous or anything. But that also creates a new challenge for everyone, because we want to utilize this, because there's competitors coming in that's only going to use technology. They're not going to use all the people side. So what do we need to do as companies? And I've spoken about the 3 strategies that I think every company today needs to very quickly adopt. And the first one is to actually reskill your current employees. So the reskilling means that the job that you're currently doing, how do we need to reskill you to utilize technology to do your current job better?
It's SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. News Network at sabc.co.za on email. After the break, we chat to South Africa's Deputy Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies about how the country plans to connect everybody by the year 2025. It is SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. News Network at sabc.co.za on email. Welcome back. Now, the South African government has its South Africa Connect program, and they're planning that about 100% of the people in the country will be connected by the year 2025, and this is to the internet and other digital technologies that need the internet. It's a very ambitious project, as we've told you in many places that we've been to on many occasions here on Network, that there are still places, even though it's not a huge number of places, there are still places in South Africa that are not connected to the internet. So it's going to have to be a project that brings together different stakeholders. But there are challenges that do come with this ambitious project. But here to talk to us about this is Mapulane, who is South Africa's Deputy Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies. Hello, and thank you very much for being a part of our network, Deputy Minister. Maybe let's start with the issue of load shedding. That is a massive issue in this country, and it probably is something that blocks people who want to connect to the internet, who want to do great things that the internet provides. Is this something that bothers you at all as a Deputy Minister?
We're experiencing severe losses in the economy as a result of energy availability, and we hope that the interventions that were announced by the President, working through the Ministry and the Department of Public Enterprises, will be able to attend to this, because there's been some estimates that even some of the advances that we've made in terms of making sure that the cost of data comes down are getting reversed by constant load shedding in our country. So for us it remains a concern, because every time there's a blackout of electricity goes down, when it comes back it affects particularly our sector.
There's also the digital divide in this country that was seen during the hard COVID-19 lockdown. And what the digital divide actually means at times is that there is an issue of digital literacy and people who don't know how to use certain technologies. You may connect everybody, but they might not be able to use the tools that are there once connected. How do you resolve this?
We've got a strategy, the digital skills strategy that has been adopted by government, for which we are working with NEMISA in implementing that strategy. Just recently, about a few months ago, we launched a program in Ziras called the Yarona program, Ambassadors program. So this is a digital literacy program that is driven through NEMISA, where we are recruiting digital literacy ambassadors. We are offering them some stipend, about 3,000. We are training them through NEMISA, and then we do sort of train the trainer. After training them, they go out to the communities and train the rest of the community members on digital literacy, on the ability of South Africans to be able to use the gadgets. So that is the program that we think that through it we will be able to roll out this digital literacy.
Deputy Minister, does your work with NEMISA include every portion of the country, or is this just in certain areas?
It's quite an expansive program that NEMISA is rolling out. So I'm quite excited about that program. I've said to them that we need to roll out this program throughout the country. So we started in Northwest. We were going to go to Limpopo, and then later on to KwaZulu-Natal, and throughout the country to respond primarily to this need for digital literacy.
It is quite an ambitious project. We've seen certain goalposts in other projects. For example, we may talk digital migration of television. We've seen timelines moving, shifting and changing. How realistic is your timeline of 2025 as a department?
Well, I'm quite confident, and actually what I'm talking about is not something that is not measurable. We have got the targets for digital literacy as part of our annual performance plan, so it is there. We are reporting to Parliament on it annually, we are reporting quarterly and so forth. So this that I'm talking about is not something to please yourself or the rest of our fellow South Africans. It is something that we get to be measured on, something that is contained in our annual performance plan.
All right. Thank you very much for being a part of our network, Deputy Minister. Now that is Phili Mapulane, who is the Deputy Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies in South Africa, talking about that ambitious project of connecting every single South African by the year 2025 and the challenges that might be there for South Africa. Let's take a short break. It's SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. News Network at sabc.co.za. On email. Here's what else took place in the rest of the world in the tech space.
Giant rats wearing tiny high-tech backpacks are being trained in Tanzania for search and rescue operations.
For search and rescue operations, typically teams, they have manual searchers, they use different types of technology, and they use dogs. So dogs have been used for a very long time. And all of these are very, very effective at speeding up the locating of trapped humans. But all of them are limited in one way or another in their ability to penetrate inside debris structures of collapsed buildings, which means that they can't get very close to where people might be trapped within those structures. So this is where the idea for the rats came in, because the rats are just as trainable as dogs. They've got a great sense of smell, and their small size and natural agility should hopefully make them really good in this scenario where they could squeeze in small spaces and get closer to any victims.
The rats here, however, are not the usual rodents that most people associate with garbage and disease. These are African giant pouched rats that can weigh up to around 1,500 grams. Not only are these rats very biddable, meaning they can be trained much like a dog, but they also have a longer lifespan than other rats. And now in the USA. Meta Platforms last week announced it would cut more than 11,000 jobs, or 13% of its workforce, in one of the year's biggest layoffs as the Facebook parent battles soaring costs from its push into the metaverse amid a weak advertising market. The mass layoffs, the first in Meta's 18 years history, follow thousands of job cuts at other major tech companies, including Elon Musk's owned Twitter and Microsoft Corp.
I think the clock struck midnight for Facebook. You're seeing significant growth challenges, and now they're cutting costs, especially with this metaverse strategy, which is a risky bet. And I think for Zuckerberg, this is going to be what I'll view as a moment of truth, how he navigates this.
The company also plans to cut discretionary spending and extend its hiring freeze through the first quarter, but it did not specify the impacted regions or the expected cost savings from the moves. And now in Australia. Cyber attacks against the country from criminals and state-sponsored groups jumped in the last financial year, with the government reported last week equating the assaults to one attack every 7 minutes.
Well, it's a huge wake-up call, and companies need to get their act together. That's what the Australian Signals Directorate and our other cyber security agencies are saying. They need to get their act together. There's been a big wake-up call with a couple of the failings which have been out there. We need to do much better. The government has stepped up. Private sector needs to step up.
While just over half the attacks targeted individuals for fraud and theft, the report warned the state-sponsored attackers made cyberspace a battleground and cited attacks from China's Ministry of State Security, Iran, and Russia's state-linked groups.
Globally, there's a tech skills shortage that's going on, and this has led to many countries all over the world poaching from companies and countries beyond their borders. Now, this week, our Twitter poll is asking you if you think South Africa can solve the local tech skills shortage. Now, 40% of those that responded to our poll say they don't think South Africa can solve the local tech skill shortage. In the majority is 49% of you who think South Africa cannot solve this problem, and in last place is 11%. Those are people who say they don't know. And that's it. That's all we have for you. Find us on SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's News Network at sabc.co.za, on email. From me, Spumelele Zondi, and the rest of the team right here in Cape Town. Have a good one. Bye-bye.